I am back, and I got something important that I want to talk to you guys about. This is High Priestess Jamila, and I'm going to get started on my discussion here. You might hear me fumbling around a little bit because I got to do something real quick, and then we're going to start the discussion today. Okay, I hope you guys are all doing well. This is a warning message for those of you young parents who have children under the age of, I'm going to guesstimate about the age of 8 years old. Okay. I remember that used to be me. I remember having little ones. Yes, I remember having little ones. Always such a joyous experience. I've enjoyed motherhood, very much. You know what I mean? I was very lucky to have a lot of help, in raising them. And, it just is what it is. I decided to be a single mother for my own reasons. And it just is what it is, okay? So whether or not you're a family or a single mother, that should not be up for debate. I think that was one of the most misogynistic things ever to ever hit the streets of social media, was debating and going back and forth about single parenthood. Because as you guys can see, they don't question men who are single parents. They always are after women who are single parents, which is bullshit, because that's called misogyny and sexism and double standards. And that's quite a serious double standard. Very different from other stuff. That's a seriously, really bad double standard, because, no single parent at all needs harassment and judgment and all that negativity. Okay? All right. Anyway, those of you with little children, I love looking at your videos, love your kids, love blessing your kids and stuff, love seeing you with your babies, but I got a warning for you. Especially those of you that are in social media. But I remember, and I kind of had some hard times even, I noticed some, just little things that I would notice, you know what I'm saying? But be careful and be aware of how when you have little bitty children, that's a time frame where more than likely they are not going to be attacking. Now, again, this would depend on your family and your bloodline and what your parents did and what your grandparents did, so it would depend widely on that. But while those children are usually, I'd say about 8 and under, that's not when they start getting worldly attacks, right? This is when I think that about the age of 8 years old usually is when they wait. And, that's when society comes in with a lot of the dysfunction that, believe it or not, for a lot of people will usually start in the schools. Especially if you're sending your kids to school and there's bullying going on, okay? And it'll really enrage you when you are seeing how the bullying is being handled, because bullying can be very dangerous. For some reason, these kids are in the schools beating each other to death these days. It's not like how it used to be. So in particular, y'all need to get this warning, because it's very, very demonic. So around the time that I started practicing and I started going through my spiritual journey, it was literally coincidental when the spiritual attacks and the community attacks started. So a lot of people would say, well, it was because you practiced that witchcraft. No, it wouldn't have. It would have happened regardless to what I was practicing. No, it wouldn't have. And the reason why I was attacked was because I was attacked by child predators. Still am being attacked by child predators. Okay. For some reason, they like to wait until the kids are a little older, or either it kind of starts there. For me, when I gave birth to my youngest, who's 13 now, um, I have three older children. So there's like, I think at least like a 10 to 13-year age gap between my kids. And so it didn't matter. It was already scheduled. It was already pre-orchestrated by some of the false people that were in my life. And, just because, mine's had strong ties with racism. I know it for a fact. It had very strong ties with racism as to why I started getting attacked. And so it didn't matter whether or not I gave birth to Jacob or not, the attacks was still going to start. And they had already started actually years before that. It's just that at that time I couldn't see it. And mainly the reason why is because when, during off and on during the times that I was raising my children, I had, again, a lot of help with housing. You know what I mean? And there would be a few times where I wanted to be independent and on my own. And for some reason, every time I would try to be independent and on my own, uh, there would be certain attacks. Like, it was really weird. It was very weird and strange. Just be careful when they get about, I'd say, you know what, if I could go back and change it, I wouldn't have been in La La Land, and I would have went ahead and put things into place and put things into perspective. When my older children were being raised, I would have went ahead and did all the work ultimately that I'm doing now. Everything that I know now, I would have put it into place then, right? Is what I would have done back then. And again, like I told you guys, that whole thing where I believe that everything that happens leads you up to where you're supposed to be. Because all of life, when I look back at it, I've kind of felt like a lot of the things that happened to me in my life were orchestrated. And it was almost like this weird off Truman show. It was all manipulation, and I would never regret the kids or whatever. No. But, I think that up until the point of 2025 was when a lot of the manipulation, I got rid of it. A lot of the false things, my kids are never false, ever. But I think that there was a lot of things that was pre-orchestrated because there are, certain people that are manipulating and doing a lot of things to, manipulate your path. Okay. And so, at any rate, it was meant for me to go through that, but I don't think it's necessarily meant for you guys to go through that, because I mean, you guys are strong. I'm not saying that you're weak and I'm strong and no. But some of you guys, like for example, a lot of you married couples who are together, is, there's already being things that are being done and being put into place for you to divorce. These things are not of your choice. These things are being pre-orchestrated for you and manipulated, especially if people have like a fixation on your kids or whatever, or either if they're jealous of you, things are already being put into place so that, you can be more vulnerable, so that they can have access and, more control. Uh, Especially a lot of you guys that are on YouTube and in social media. There are some people that believe that life is a stage. I hate it when people say that. Don't y'all hate that? Life is not a stage. There was an actress that was being stalked, um, and I had saw a couple of her videos. A friend of mine had told me about her, and that I definitely empathize with her going through stalking. But when she said, the world is a stage, and she may have had her own meaning for that, but your life is not a stage. Your life is life. If I could go back and change it, I would have never put my kids' faces anywhere in social media, anywhere. You understand me? But it just is what it is. Because there's a lot of people that are trying to orchestrate your life, and they have a very warped view on life. Very warped view. So as long as you are prepared for it, when I come and talk to you guys about this stuff, and anything that is spiritual, the spiritual work, when you're doing any kind of spiritual work, these are things that you deal with, you get confirmation that it is done, and you keep it moving. There's really no such thing as a back and forth. The back and forth bullcrap is a fucking abomination. Once a human being has made a discovery like that, technically, the stage is supposed to stop. Everybody's supposed to exit stage left and let it go. Pull the curtain, pull the plug. It's done. It's done. Okay. But for some reason, there's there's this need for people to try to continue for whatever reason that they have, which is totally ridiculous. I wish I could reveal some of the things that I know. I've been sworn to secrecy completely and totally, probably for the next year or so, especially about planetary alchemy. I've been sworn to exact secrecy because there's no way that information needs to be given to the wrong person, because people will use it for evil. Okay? So it's no way I would. No way. There's a lot of people that know, and they use that information for good things. They don't use it for bad things. You know what I'm saying? But the bad people will use it for bad. There is some bad people that know about it, and they do use it for evil. And, they having a lot of problems with that. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, they create the trauma and then they benefit from the trauma. So, for example, if you're a young married couple and you got your babies, they're already pre-orchestrating a breakup. Why? Because they want to create that trauma so that they can benefit from it, whatever they can. If they can feed off of it, if they can destroy your money, if they can get their hands on your kids to be used for whatever sick, perverted thing that they have. And please believe that somebody's yearning for a child, right? This is why black market um, adoption has been outlawed, because somebody yearning for a child and setting their sights on your kid, and if they have enough money to make it happen, that's perverted to take a child away from their mother or father. That's perverted. Just because, I want that child, that's craziness. I've seen several movies about that, like true stories too, about, rich, and even some of the rich and prominent families. Uh, it was a story about this man that, his daughter had a baby out of wedlock, and he felt that the child was gonna, be a shame to the family or mess up his, him running for office, and so he just kind of created a situation to where his daughter, the mother of his grandchild, was drugged up and signed away her rights for the baby, and this other rich and prominent couple ended up with the baby. That's still, even if it's a signature, something like that kind of manipulation is still a black market adoption. And she ended up getting the baby back. So I'll be watching movies like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy. Like, she's like my baby. A mother is going to want her baby. That's horrifying that there are people out here. That's just like years ago, Jesse Lee Peterson. I don't like that man at all. I think he's a reptilian. I don't like him at all. Ugh. What the heck are you? He was saying we need to take all children of single parents and give them to married people. And I bet you a lot of married people that were normal was like, well, I'm married and I ain't trying to take somebody else's kid. You know what I'm saying? But that's just sick. And this man is prominent in social media and in the world. A lot of people know Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson. And he just gets to say all kinds of outrageous and perverted crap like that. And then people just, society just says, oh, he said that. Yeah, but did you know that he sounds demented? That sounds demented. And yes, they are, and they will try to create financial struggle. They want their hands on them kids. I've never seen so much baby stealing and selling in my life. Kids stealing and selling and exploitation. They don't even put the kids. Well, none of the milk comes in milk cartons anymore. Remember when you go to Walmart and they would have the missing children? Some Walmarts still have that. But the milk cartons with the missing children on the back of them, they got the Amber Alerts now, but they don't even have that anymore. It's watch your kids, because there's people that are after them for various reasons, and some of those reasons are very egregious. And then here I come, a representative of St. Gabriel. And they hate my freaking guts. And it's not just the cult of hate. Oh my God, it's a lot of them. It's a lot. Y'all be surprised y'all be surprised if y'all knew all the adversaries that I have. Oh, goodness gracious, it's crazy. Especially if I'm coming to women and saying, or men and saying, hey, I'm here to help your children. But, there's a lot of very big angels, Saint Michael, Saint Gabriel, a lot of others that I'm not going to mention because y'all not ready to hear that are standing guard that will protect me and my loved ones. It's like, so, it is what it is, but they can't stand me. They like, if I could just put that bitch through a meat grinder, I would. It's not like I'm going to be able to help the whole world. It's only a select few, but it's like, you're the target. You're the target. I'm like, all right, you know what I'm saying? let's go. Get ready to rumble because this is ridiculous, you know. And I got, you know, they think they don't really believe that God is real, but they found out, didn't they? They know God is real. I let them know, like I prove to them every day how real God is and his army. Uh-huh. I let them know every single day. It's weird. You know what I'm saying? So they, you know, they just like, wow, you know. So they're like, you know, suppress her because they need to have more choices. They need to have access to a lot of different children and families, you know. If they can get in your family and do whatever, you know, just control you with, either energy attacks or manipulation, mind control, um, sorcery, you know, to, you know, just cause as much trauma as possible. You know, that's what they want. God doesn't want that, but that's what they want because man is you know, especially those men are not even close to God. So it's really a very sick. It's sick. It's sick. It is. Okay. And you know, I'm surviving and have survived some of the sickest crap that I have ever seen in my life. And it's always centered around your children, you know. It really is. It's always centered around children. You know, that's why a lot of people, I see them all the time. They're like, I would never bring a child into this world. And I'm like, I know. But, you know, you do know that you have the power to protect your children. But, you know, just seeing how things are, how people are in this world, you know. So I don't blame them for not wanting to bring children into this world, but nobody's rights should be denied to do that, you know, because that's a part of our human nature. Okay. Why do I turn off my comment section? Aquarian 92. Uh, I can turn it back on if y'all want. It's not that big of a deal. I can turn it back on. I think that at that time I just didn't want to deal. I couldn't deal with, you know, but I can turn that back on. Sure, I will. I'll do that. I'll just have to edit all of my videos because you have to do like a mass edit of, so some of them might have the comments still turned off, but you know, because I may not be able to catch all of them because when you go into the YouTube studio to update it, you have videos and then you have your shorts and then you have your live streams. And so I think that with the videos you can select all of them, but with the live streams you can't just hit select all. So that kind of makes editing your channel for that purpose. But I can, going forward, I can open up the comment section. Yeah. So anyway, make sure that you're putting things into place. You know, there's been a lot of evil things that have been happening for quite some time, but I do believe that ever since like the year 2000 or maybe in like the 1990s or somewhere in there, I do think that it got worse. So it is quite different from what it used to be, from when we were born. Something has changed and we're, you know, we are experiencing something that is really malignant and malevolent right now. It's insidious. And so, you know, our parents, they didn't necessarily have to do that, or our grandparents, even though I'm into prevention, you know, but I'd say that if you know, going forward, I feel like everybody should do that. I feel like everybody should consult someone trusted and just get the information that you need and lay out that blueprint, create that blueprint to where And it's not that you be attracting it to yourself. You're not attracting it to yourself. You're just being cautious to prevent it because for some reason, something wants power and control over your kids and your family. And it's weird. Even if you're a sensible family and you can just be sitting at home chilling and not doing anything, you're just not, you know what I mean? You're just being a family, it's not anything weird going on. Here they come. And it happens to people, and a lot of people get blindsided, when this need for children, it almost seems like it's a quota. It's very scary. It's very scary these days. It's like there's a quota. It's like some kind of underground thing or some kind of, oh my God, to where, and luck of the draw, they'll roll the dice out there. And the next thing you know, you and your children are on their hit list. I'm just telling you. Now, do I feel that everything happens randomly? No, I don't. This comes from a movie reference. It's a domestic violence movie, which is why I think that they, a lot of the hate people attack Jennifer Lopez a lot. But y'all know that movie enough when Julia, oh my God, she's one of my favorite actresses. Her friend, y'all know who I'm talking about, the girl that was in Hotel California. She says to her, you have a divine right to protect yourself and your children. And so I'm not bringing that up to bring up domestic violence, even though domestic violence is a problem. It is. It's a problem. It is a serious problem that seems to be getting pushed to the back burner of the priority list or something. It used to be a very serious thing back during the days of, Farrah Fawcett and the burning bed and stuff, but it's not just that. It's families under attack. You know what I'm saying? It's husbands, wives, children under attack with purposes of gaining access. And I think probably for some reason, around the ages of 8, and it may be even younger than that. That may just be, I don't like to be biased, but for some reason I could just tell probably around 2008, 2009, I just noticed something, like, I don't know, like something got unleashed. And my instinct was to practice my craft. That was my instinct, okay? Other people's instinct may be something else. But I think that the situation is complicated enough to where you need to tap into these universal powers to, to not become a statistic. It's almost like it's a numbers game. It's really scary, it is. So just be careful with that, you know. Um, hmm. Yeah, I'm not afraid to come on here and talk about stuff like that because, like I said, we're untouchable, straight up and down. That whatever that energy is that likes to swoop through and take people, taking from people, knows that it needs to pass me and my loved ones and my clients by, like, not by, straight up and down, because it's not something that has actually been orchestrated by God. It's, and they have their guns, they have their bullets. Nah, I'm not afraid of guns and bullets or acid or knives. I'm not afraid of that. Nor am I afraid of energy attacks. And so just be careful because right now they're just so cute and it's just like and you're filling those kids up with all that love and everything, and it's almost like you're almost like fattening them up and giving them all of that love and care until the truth comes forth and it's unveiled, and they're trying to cash in on your family. It's weird, it's for the life of me, I do overstand. I actually overstand why there's so many people that are confused. There's many different reasons as to why there are a lot of people that are confused as to why they feel the need to still exploit and feed off of other people, as opposed to just kind of looking up at the sky and it's like it's all right there. What are you doing? It's so that, but I overstand. Actually, I overstand because there's a lot of people that are ignorant to that. But that doesn't mean that if maybe possibly if my audience hadn't gotten limited to so little, and perhaps if I had a broader audience, I'm not sure, maybe my spirits would want me to discuss more of it as far as how to truly connect to source. Because I think even people that are practicing Reiki could really use that advice. But, nah, we're not going to do that because, I've been put in positions of being compromised that I should have never been put into. You know what I mean? Like it's been insane. So we're going to, digress from that. But I do want as many people to hear this as possible, that you need to protect your babies because it's I don't want to say something like it's a lie, it's all a lie, because you have the right to create your own reality. But when you look at it, it is a lie. when you when I think when I think about how bad it got for me, the ruthlessness of it, the cruelty, the evil. When I thought about that, when I noticed that, it's just it's kind of like, you know, it's crazy. It's up to you to transmute it though, because what was meant to literally destroy you or mess you up, it's up to you if you're going to transmute that situation. And transmuting is changing something. We could say, okay, an example of transmutation would be changing a negative into a positive. That's what that would be. Okay, transmuting negative into positive. Okay, so which which taps into the energies of destiny. Okay, if you Google it, it'll tell you. Google is going to tell you that you can't change your destiny. Many of us disagree, especially the witches. We disagree with that notion because somebody else is controlling your destiny. Why would you do understand when something else that doesn't love you or care about you is controlling your destiny? That's when start to realize, like, wow, you know, and a lot of people just don't know that, so it's that deep. So just make sure that y'all understand that. And so a lot of people have very um, devout Christian views, right? But then sometimes when you look at your kids, you get scared. You love them, but you get scared and you get anxiety and you know something is wrong. It's nothing wrong with your kids. It's something wrong with what's out there, right? That's when you have to pay attention to those times, right? And they'll tell you, well, you can't protect them from everything. But you know what? That's just like a parent that decides to homeschool their kid who uh, technically in the real world, there's not a lot of scrutiny behind that. But if you decide that you want to homeschool your kid because the schools are real violent and, various children came up dead at the school. What's that guy's name? Kendrick something. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean no disrespect, but by not knowing his name. But the school that your kids go to, somebody just got shot last week. Uh, and these kids in school are literally murdering each other, and and then you've got the terrorists that are blowing up the schools, and there's a lot of stuff like that that's going on. So it's kind of like you know that's can be what's out there, and so of course, if you're actively being threatened in that way, what are you going to do? It's almost like, I can't think of that new Holly Berry movie where she like literally kept her kids in the house. It was just really crazy. Um, you don't have to go that far, but I do think that when they're young, you have to keep an eye on them because, especially if you're in the public eye, you know what I mean? So just be aware of that and get as much information as possible and know the world that you're in. Know the world that you're in and know what God wants you to know. God wants you to know that. God does not want you to be ignorant to that. Because being ignorant does not protect you. It doesn't. So in particular, I remember raising my kids, and you know, there would be every once in a while I would just get this anxiety, especially there was some kind of war that was going on when I was in my 20s. And I would just go to the hospital and I'd be like, what's wrong with me? Am I dying? And it was anxiety. But I would, and it was my mind and my body was trying to tell me something is wrong here. And it was a warning of what was to come. It was literally me picking up on these schemes and plots and plans that had been put into place for years. That was where the rug was getting ready to be pulled from up underneath me. And so, that was why I had started practicing the craft in my I was like mid 20s, right? And so there were certain things that I did, even while I had no freaking idea what I was doing then. I did the best that I could. But there were certain things that I did bury in the ground. There were certain things that I put up in the air that I know protected us. And then I didn't go back to it until like more than 10 years later. And I'm glad that I did that because, it was literally like I sat back and I said, my God, I said, something is trying to literally swallow up my children whole. Something is trying to take them. Something is trying to hurt them. And this was something that manifested, the whole time. However, I knew that I would be able to protect my children. I knew that. So, you know, but there's a lot of people that you want to protect, even people that you haven't met yet. Some of the people that you haven't met yet, like, for example, the love of your life, your true love. You need to be protecting that person now. What's wrong with that? Why do we think that men don't need protection? They're taught in order to be a man, they have to believe what they believe, and they've been brainwashed. But that doesn't mean that you should just, so the children, yes, make sure the children are protected, but also, like, those of you that are hopeless romantics like me, and you're like, I know he's out there, and protect them, protect your children in the future, even if you haven't given birth to them. Protect them. Start laying out the blueprint for that. Okay. Because listen, if you are living within your destiny and you are setting the tone for that, then that makes it more difficult for them to orchestrate and control your life. Like, they don't like that. They do not like that. But too bad. That's where you have to truly be like, I don't care what they think. And then also people's thoughts, collective thought forms and collective consciousness is what you are fighting against. So that has to be handled very meticulously, and you can't play around with it. A lot of us, innocently enough, I know that I started on YouTube. I put my kids and family on Facebook and stuff, and I'm just la di da di da. Just, oh God. The attack would have came anyway, regardless if I practiced witchcraft. That's bull crap. It would have been worse. It would have been worse. It would have been much worse, to the point where I would have a broken heart to this day, a true broken heart. Okay, not a fake one, a true broken heart. It would be broken in two. Um, and then when I came to YouTube, y'all gotta understand, I've been on YouTube for upwards to 20 years now. I've been on YouTube for 20 years. I had another channel called Terry Cloth 97, and I had my kids on here, and my kids was vlogging. There's a lot of videos that are on private with my daughter, who had like a sub channel to my main channel that got flagged down, that I wish that YouTube would bring back. I need to contact them about that. Don't I? We need to bring back the Terry Cloud 97 channel, don't we? That would be so nice. I had so many vlogs. I was vlogging my pregnancy. I was being attacked. I didn't care because, I went through something, had a horrible pregnancy loss, and I didn't handle it like a trooper. Like, that was the worst thing. God knows what I can handle, because I was broken. I was broken into after, like, I couldn't handle that pregnancy loss. It was horrible, and I felt completely empty. And then there came Jacob, who is my rainbow baby, which is the baby that you have after you lose a child. And so, however way you want to look at it, there's some people that'll look at it like, well, that baby was only 8 weeks old when you lost it. It wasn't a baby, it was a thing, but it was still my baby. It was still, you know, I had a connection with that child for those 8.5 weeks, and it was devastating. Okay, it was. So nobody. So when it comes to pregnancy loss, nobody, somebody that would say that to you is very cruel. Don't. That's horrible. That's horrifying. But so, but I've been on here for 20 years, and I had my children on here, and I see so many beautiful families on here. I love, watching over your kids. I feel now, I do, like, when it comes to my, what they call a delusion of grandeur. I do feel like a grandiose thing, to where I feel like I'm like a guardian to children. I feel like I'm like an incarnated living angel for children. I do. So I watch over you guys as babies, along with my babies, because my kids be like, Mom, you got grandbabies. We're your babies. They don't. I'm like, I know, and it's kind of like, I did the best I could to not let y'all go through trauma. They make it hard for you, though. They do. They want your children to go through trauma and torment, and I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. Just bullcrap, bullshit. No, They, like the stuff that they do, ugh. And I hate that. I despise that. So anyway, that's just, um, especially when the trauma involves death. Like, oh God. And they will try to orchestrate your death. They will. It's sad, but it's the truth. So, you orchestrate your life. That's what you do, seriously. Because they'll orchestrate your death and they'll try to say that it's God. God will say, no. There's certain things that have happened, for me, including my mother's death. Something was off about that. Something was not quite right about that. It was like, oh, that, like, it's something ain't right about that. I know that kids have a hard time in general accepting that, but for me, it's something weird about that I don't have. Well, I know where, I haven't had the time to research it and to actually, I will soon, but it is what it is, whatever. I kind of already know, but, it is what it is. But anyway, so just just be aware of that. Okay, be aware of that. Maybe it's because when the kids start getting older, they start going on play dates more often, they start visiting other families more often. Maybe it's because they're being exposed to different realities. Maybe that's why it seems different when they are younger, when they're like, because for me, I kept my babies at home. Like, I just my cat, I just didn't believe in, hey, it's, they did eventually start to do things like that, but when they were little babies, it's just, you unless it's me, like, my grandson, my grandbaby can come and spend the night with me because I'm grandma, and my kids trust me. But just, hey, go over there, and just be leery of that, because you don't really know what is happening, and so I, it didn't seem like the kids were adversely affected by that. I felt like they were really well adjusted to that, to where I always had them at home because home was the safest. Um, so anyway, and I always kept a somewhat of a peaceful, quiet household, unless the kids were being rambunctious, but just, having a whole lot of trauma and yelling and screaming. No, no. I did let my kids watch scary movies, but that I got that from my mama, so that's not my fault. You know what I'm saying? But yeah. So just I'm just saying, just be aware of the evil that's out there. Okay. Be aware of it, okay? And if some off crap starts happening, you can go to your pastors, but please, it doesn't have to be me, but go to somebody trusted like me, because the one thing that my clients are going to tell you is that they know they can trust me. My real clients, they're going to tell you that, like, because that's one of the things that I don't like people watched me go through it. Like, there was witnesses to what I went through, the hell I went through to protect my children. And you know what? It ain't even a thing. I would die for my children. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not, but I don't have to die for them. I get to live and be with them, and see them grow up, because God is willing. You know what I'm saying? And but it's no life at all. It's something that I would have preferred not to deal with. I mean, when I think about how I was kind of uprooted, that was crazy. How, I kind of feel like I would have still had the same people, in my life, like I still would have met my significant other. I still would have more than likely had my grandbabies at the time. But when I think about my mother's frequency, if I would have did it on her time, I would be sitting in my family home right now. Probably would have owned about 3 or 4 houses by now, upgraded, or maybe yeah, or and I would have some. You know how like when the kids grow and you make marks on the wall, with their height and stuff and their names and stuff, that part, So it was a lot of things that I went through that, I feel like I wish I would have listened to my mother. You know what I'm saying? So, anywho, we made it through it. We survived it, and we're going to continue to flourish. But find out what's going on. One thing that I do want to, I'll give you guys like I don't know, like a lot of people, they'll say, oh, that astrology is bullcrap. And there's a lot of different opinions about astronomy. You guys know that I'm into astrology. My grandmother was actually into astrology as well. And so she's been enjoying, watching over me study. She's in the spirit realm. Um, Things in the universe do have an influence. That's all I'm going to say, is that the universe does influence. How it influences you is going to be up to you, is what I will tell y'all. Okay. So, anywho, that's pretty much it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this discussion. Please like, share, subscribe. Also, subscribe to the Witch's Broom channel. I've been on this channel a lot more because we're trying to pull people from the fire, people that deserve to be pulled from the fire. Um, but I really, and then also I have a TikTok page where I do upload readings too. So make sure that y'all go and subscribe and follow. Make sure y'all hit the thumbs up. And if you guys need to reach out to me, it is divineservicesapothecary.com. Okay. All right, guys. Peace and love to y'all. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye.